that. The Friedkin Group have, well, subject to a few ticks, etc., with the Premier League, have bought Fayed Mashiri's 94.1% stake in the club.
Yeah.
Ben Jacobs has been following this. Good afternoon, Ben.
Good afternoon, guys.
Is this good news for Everton?
Very good news for Everton. I think the most important thing was that the ownership situation was resolved, because that allows any new owner, likely now the Friedkin Group, subject to those approvals, to start running both the club and completing the new stadium, because Everton have been in limbo a little bit, and it certainly affected them in the summer transfer window. Of course, we haven't got time to delve into the whole saga, but 777 became debt-ridden. John Textor came, but before he did, the Friedkin Group were there in an exclusive period, and due diligence led them to think that they couldn't complete a deal. But crucially, in that due diligence, what they did was lend Everton 200 million to pay off a loan that was owed to MSP Sports Capital, another player in all of this, and help fund the new stadium. So about 150 in the loan and then 50 towards the new stadium. And that made them a major player and a lender, and I think gave them a little bit of leverage in all of this. So they walked away. Then John Textor made a lot of noise about buying the club, but Friedkin Group said, if it's not us, anyone else that comes in has to pay back that 200 million. So it became new and urgent debt, even if it doesn't have a massive amount of interest or anything like that. And Textor was at a disadvantage because he couldn't go into an exclusive period before he sold his Palace shares, which still haven't happened. So that allowed Friedkin to continue conversations with the club, and Textor as well, because he was talking to all prospective bidders, and decide that actually there was a way of doing this. And we're told from sources two things. One, that it's a 12-week approval process, so it's done in principle, but not formally. And two, that the structure of the deal has changed. So originally, it was just a simple offer at an amount in excess of 300 million. Now I would imagine that the asking price has dropped, but also because that 200 million of Friedkin's money is already into the club, there's a possibility of turning that into equity, which makes it a more favourable deal as far as the Friedkin Group are concerned. So a good deal all round, and hopefully now the approvals can get done and Everton can have some stability.
Does this help them around FFP if there was an issue beforehand?
Well, I think Everton, bizarrely, were quite calm about the FFP situation. Ultimately, they didn't feel bullied by Manchester United to sell Jared Branthwaite. They got Broja in the end, albeit only on a loan. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's still there as well. So once they got past that PSR deadline, I think it was apparent that instead of overstretching and overspending and being worried about more penalties, Everton were basically just in limbo and stagnant and not able to do the business. So they were taking the hit less in terms of a new financial problem and a points deduction, and more in terms of just not doing that much in the market. And that may well benefit Friedkin now coming in. We still have to wait and see whether or not there are future breaches in relation to historical debt. And that's the worry, that another points deduction could come. And in addition to that, there's a dispute going on at the moment whereby Everton don't feel the interest payments around their new stadium should be factored in on their books, but the Premier League do. And if you add those interest payments, then they're still over the threshold with a little bit of work to do. So it should be a little bit calmer. And obviously from Friedkin's point of view, he'll be looking for a stadium completion plan. He'll be looking for an injection of cash to make sure that the club hopefully is on a firm footing and can pay all of its imminent bills. There is still tidying up to do. So this is the start of a new era, but the financial stability isn't there yet. But from Friedkin's point of view, when he walked away from the first part of due diligence, it was not because he feared that the club was in financial ruin. It was due to the complexity of the debt, plus the asking price, which was not seen as value for money. And now there's a feeling from the Friedkin Group that with the price likely dropping and the structure of a deal changing because he's already put money in the club, that should allow Everton a short-term path. And as long as they obviously stay up in the Premier League, which is a big if, then Friedkin, I'm sure, will feel that he can actually take Everton and move them forwards in a very positive direction now.
They're ripe for a takeover, when you say the new ground, but of course it's so much harder now than, say, when Abramovich came in. There's so much competition at the top of the Premier League. I don't mean the very, very top, but the top 8. It's going to be hard for them. It's going to take time, but it's got to be good news for the fans.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously, Everton, massive club and long-standing Premier League member and new stadium. There's a lot to like, great community, strong fan base as well. And he's not inheriting a club that necessarily expect overnight to be, for example, in European football. I think Everton fans would take staying up this season and then being miles away from the relegation zone, even if they're also a large distance from European football, but in the right direction. And there may be some concerns from fans about, to an extent, Roma. There's a bit of turmoil there. They've just lost their manager. The CEO stood down as well. So some Everton fans will be looking at that. But generally speaking, what Friedkin did at Roma is modernise the club, put in place a new recruitment structure. And I think there is a lot to like about his football philosophy. And the other thing is just the price and the value from Friedkin's point of view. So if we take Everton's finances and put them to one side, if you look at this ballpark, which was Mashiri's valuation throughout the whole process of 300 to 350 million, that's actually more than Newcastle United, which is why a lot of suitors didn't want to pay it. But if the price drops below, let's just call it 300 million, then we're not talking 2.5 billion for Chelsea, 3 billion or so, which was the rough valuation of Jim Ratcliffe. It's actually 10% of that kind of number, inheriting a historical club like Everton. And I think Friedkin will look at this and see it as a massive opportunity rather than a financial problem. And if you can get through the short term at Everton, the long-term future with that new stadium could be very rosy indeed.
Excellent. Good to talk to you, Ben. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Ben Jacobs there explaining all around the Friedkin Group takeover of Everton. And we'll be chatting, as we said, Theo Walcott a little bit later on. Spent about 3 years at the club, I think, to get his take on that. And yes, Ben mentioned Roma. I mean, I would imagine Friedkin's going to want to feel the love when he goes to Goodison this weekend when they play Palace, because he's not getting it in Rome at the moment, as Andy Brassell, our European expert, will reveal very shortly. Good afternoon, Andy.
Afternoon, fellas.
Let's start in Rome, shall we? I was just saying there that he's going to feel the love, hopefully, when Palace go to Goodison, is Dan Friedkin at the weekend. But he's certainly not been feeling it. The hierarchy at Roma have not been feeling it. That's the club he owns as well, because although they got a win the weekend, it's all gone off upstairs, isn't it, after the sacking of Daniele De Rossi?
Yeah, it has. Roma fans are as outraged as I can remember a group of fans being over the sacking of a coach. Of course, it's not just any old coach. He's the second most popular player in Roma history after Francesco Totti, Daniele De Rossi. You know, he's someone who played for the club for all of his career, apart from 6 months at Boca Juniors, whose dad was in charge of the academy, who was a warrior, a leader on the pitch, and took over from Mourinho when things were in the dumpster and got them through to the end of the season, and was given a new contract going back to June, going through to 2017. So that they didn't win the first 4 games of the season, okay, not ideal, but I think most reasonable people believe that De Rossi deserved a little bit more. The fact that he has that legendary club status was even more so. You have a lot of Roma fans at the moment so angry about the way he's been treated, and the way, in many of their words, the Friedkins only care about money, that the fans behind one of the Cordovas didn't come in for the first half hour yesterday. And they had one of their best performances of the season, actually, against Udinese, who had previously been leaders of Serie A, got a 3-0 win. And the fans didn't come in for the first half an hour, which is an extraordinary set of circumstances, really. But if you're looking at the wider picture for Everton, I think it's difficult to really compare the two situations, because they took over Roma, in which, in one way, it's similar in that it's a club that was leaking money for a long time. They have been dealing with a thorny stadium issue. Now, of course, Everton are far further along the line with their new stadium. The Friedkins will consider it a big plus if they manage to get their new stadium project over the line, which they've been trying to do for a long time. Obviously, it's different because most of the grounds in Italy are municipally owned. So you have to have your own stadium to A, stand out, B, have an opportunity to make money in the way that Juventus did when they moved into the Allianz. But that question of connection and communication with the fans is something that can only be answered with actions, really.
I'm not sure the Everton fans will react quite the same if they get rid of Sean Dyche. I'm not saying they should, but, you know, yeah. Well, it's different, isn't it, with De Rossi as a fan favourite.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.